blah, blah, blah. Don't say blah, blah, blah.
This hasn't been recording.
Seriously?
No. This is the Apparently Autistic podcast,
Where we unmask the spectrum
with real voices.
and real experiences.
We're your hosts, Keith Holloway,
And Bridget Holloway.
and I am Apparently Autistic. Before we get started, just a quick reminder. We're not experts in anything except our own personal experiences and perspectives.
Be sure to check out the important disclaimers and disclosures in the show notes.
Now let's dive in. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Apparently Autistic podcast. We're your hosts, Keith.
And Bridget.
And we're up to episode 12 now.
Yep.
So, a couple of things first before we get into the episode. First, the giveaway. We didn't have any entries. So,
Ruh-roh. That's all right.
Can't give it
still
away.
gonna.
We're still really new, so I'm not surprised. But what we'll do is we're actually going to make a donation in the amount that's about the cost of a free shirt to either, was it Autism Society of America or maybe the Autism Self-Advocacy Network.
Yep.
We'll
give back.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're new, and
Yeah.
I think that people hesitate to give out their information in today's world, and I totally get it.
Yep.
So we will still give back and
try
celebrate
again
our
later,
10th
too.
episode. And once people get to know us better, and
Still, if you want to leave us a review, that will help us, whether you screenshot it and send it to us or not.
Yeah.
I've Google searched us, and we have like 2 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, so that's good.
Oh, nice.
No, nothing actually written about us, but people seem to enjoy it.
thank you for that. So yeah,
whoever did
definitely.
that, appreciate it very much. So yeah, there's that, and we'll try again in the future. We'll do these things every now and then, and we're still growing our audience, and it's still growing. So
Yep, still new. We're learning how to do this ourselves. So
if you want to interact with us, so we've said before, Facebook is where we're the most active as far as social media goes. I had an Instagram that was somehow connected to my personal Facebook page. I've disconnected those now, but I still use the Instagram more for like sending Instagrams to family members and stuff. So I don't really post on Instagram that much.
yeah, Facebook is probably best,
Yep.
or our email. So
Yep.
definitely reach out to us. We are looking forward to interacting more and more with people as
for
this
sure.
grows. So
I've had a lot of good interactions with people, especially from your posts.
The Real Talk-
Yeah, the Real Talk post.
Real
yeah.
Talk Autistic
brain-
Spouse Edition.
My
Yeah.
brain blanked for a second.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, we seem
Um,
to get a lot of good interaction there,
I've-
so that's good.
Had quite a few good comments and insights,
Mhm.
different perspectives. So I definitely appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, check out our merch store.
Yes. I keep saying that I'm going to work on that, and I finally have some time off work this week, so I'll try to dive into that. And
We really have been busy. I know it's kind of a cliche thing to say, but hey, I'm autistic. If I'm telling you I'm busy, I'm busy.
you actually
No,
have been.
we've been
with
pretty.
family visiting and stuff in
Yeah.
summertime, it's
We had a pretty good weekend. We're recording this on Monday. Usually we've got it recorded and done, but we've had such a busy weekend. We saw family yesterday, got to spend some time with a great nephew of ours, and then another like related person through marriage. My sister's husband also had her
the
baby
great
there.
nephew's cousin, but
Yeah.
they're related in a way that they're not really directly related to us,
Right.
Because they're through in-laws. So
Family's for us though, so
the babies are 6 weeks apart, and we just
Yeah.
got lots of baby cuddles
Oh,
this
yeah.
weekend.
it
So
was a lot of fun.
it seems like it was at least good for your soul, but I think it was good for everybody
Yeah.
to see family and spend that time together. So
Yeah. We also have 2 dogs that are fighting. Hey,
Harvey, come here,
Mala, come here.
lay down. You just stay right here.
Harvey's going to do what he's told, but Mala is a little more
She's trying to get him
rebellious. Yep.
to not
Mala,
listen.
come here. Come on. Yeah, let's lay down. Anyways, so
Yep.
yeah, we've been kind of busy lately, and that's why the merch store hasn't really gotten as much attention as we wanted to. But
So anyways, there's your update.
Yeah.
And now we're going to dive into episode 12. And
Mhm.
we are going to debunk some myths about autism today.
Yep.
So
I kind of did like what are some of the typical autistic or myths about autism, and we came up with 5 that we're going to address. There's obviously more than 5.
Yeah, these are 5 that you picked that really resonate with you. And I think that that's not unique to you, but they're definitely specific to your experience. So definitely this is not an all-inclusive list. I'm sure people have different experiences with other myths and things that people assume. So these are just 5 that we picked from the list.
Yep. So we'll dive right into that. The first myth I wanted to talk about is that autistic people have no empathy. And this is one you see out there, usually from people who don't have a lot of knowledge or experience about autism. Unfortunately, I had an experience with someone who should have enough knowledge to know better, and that was an actual counselor that I went to.
Yeah.
I've told the story before, but met with the guy one time, and at the end of the session, he said, well, I don't think you're autistic because you actually care about your family.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah.
Well, and I think that from my perspective, like at first I didn't realize how deeply things affected you early on in our marriage. Now, as we've gained trust and moved past that, and you've been willing to show me more of how things affect you, and now knowing that you're autistic, I can definitely like firsthand attest that there's not just a pure lack of empathy.
No.
I think that people assuming that, one, there's different situations. Some people are not empathetic, autistic or non-autistic.
Right.
That's just the truth. And so it does exist. We're not saying it doesn't exist. But the general rule, it's definitely not the rule. And I think that part of why people think that is because of the masking.
Yeah.
So you have such a high drive and need to mask that people assume that you don't have those feelings.
Well, that's part of what we're masking is the
vulnerability.
The vulnerability,
Yeah.
right. I think the confusion sometimes comes from what autistic people are generally bad at is picking up on social cues, picking up on, like unspoken communication sometimes.
Yeah.
Being able to read the room, being able to, sometimes
pick up
reading,
on other people's feelings.
Right. We struggle sometimes, to understand what someone is feeling in the moment. But as I've told you before, like I tend to feel what other people are feeling. Like if I know someone's really distressed or really hurting, like that affects me.
Yeah.
A lot more than I think it affects the typical person. It's like we actually have hyper empathy, really.
Yeah. Well, and I think it depends on the stressfulness and the busyness of the situation too. Like you had a whole bunch of other stimulants into the situation, and maybe you're less likely to pick up on that. So there's some other things that play into it too.
Yeah. Well, just being able to express our emotions is difficult for us. And like you said, sometimes we're overwhelmed, and that just makes it even harder to communicate.
Yeah.
The real issue that I think when it comes to empathy is what a lot of people call the double empathy problem. And that has to do with communication between autistics and non-autistics. And I found a good explanation for that I wanted to, because I want to make sure I get it right. So the double empathy problem is the idea that communication issues between autistic and non-autistic people aren't just because autistic people lack empathy. It's really a both sides communication issue. There was a study that they did where they put, autistic people in a room with non-autistic people, and then they put autistic people in a room with other autistic people. And it's not that autistic people struggle to communicate. We're just speaking a different language.
Communicate differently.
Yeah.
And
when you put a bunch of autistic people together, they're able to communicate and they're able to interact and they can socialize well. It's just we don't speak the same language as
well, and it's kind of funny because you don't speak the same language, but I would say the same thing. I don't speak the same language as you sometimes. And we have to make that effort.
It's a two-way communication issue.
Yeah.
It's just that, the neurotypical is considered normal. And so it's like, oh, well, the autistic people are the different ones. So they're the problem.
I just think it's important that we kind of try to change that view, though. It's not a problem with the way that neurodivergent people communicate. It can also be a problem with how neurotypical people communicate with the neurodivergent people. So we can kind of meet in the middle on that one.
It's something that needs to be addressed and understood both ways, for sure. I don't think we should be trying to change the way that neurodivergent people communicate.
No.
But we can teach them better to understand neurotypicals, but that needs to happen on both sides.
Yeah, for sure. That's, like you said, a two-way street, and I think the effort can be made by all involved.
Yeah.
So
I think that misunderstanding is what leads people to describe autistic people in more of a narcissistic way, though. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like that counselor that I had, that, oh, well, you clearly care deeply for your family, so you're not autistic. No, like we feel everything in a more exaggerated way almost. So
Yeah.
So that's kind of the big issue when it comes to empathy, is that people just don't fully understand. And again, because autism is a spectrum and it's not a linear spectrum, it's everyone has different strengths and different amount of difficulties or strengths in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see all kinds of different reactions and different levels of ability to understand and empathize and all of that.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think instead of viewing it as somebody that does, like a neurodivergent person doesn't have empathy, I would just challenge people to think, okay, maybe this person has walls up. Maybe it's trust issues. Maybe it's maybe the ball is in my court to build enough trust for them to feel like they can be vulnerable around me and show that empathy instead of having to hide that they're having real feelings in front of me.
Right.
So maybe like do some self-reflection and try to find ways to help that person feel safe.
Right.
That would just be my challenge on that one.
Something else that kind of, I think, plays into this a little bit is that we tend to have like a very flat tone of voice, and we tend to not emote on our faces the way that we're actually feeling.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the shirt that I'm wearing. It says, "I'm not angry. This is just my face." Like I get that a lot of time. Like people think that I'm angry or I'm a very serious person, which I'm not at all. And
but you come across that way just at a glance, like at a, what do they call it? Like the cover of a book. Like if you were just reading, like the cover of a book, the judgment there could be like that you're kind of rough exterior and not friendly or soft, or I don't know. It could be a lot of different things, but
because it's my hard candy shell, but I'm gooey on the inside.
You are gooey on the inside. That's true. That's funny. Yep.
But yeah, so that's the first myth we wanted to talk about. If you notice that my forehead is sweating, it's warm in here, and we just
hot wings for dinner.
Wings, and my scalp sweats when I eat hot wings. So, so that's fun. And plus, having a dog adding heat. If you're not watching, Mala's laying on my side like she usually does.
She's belly up.
Mm-hmm.
She just wants her belly scratched.
Yep, and she knows she gets it when we
do this, because it keeps her staying in one place. Oh goodness.
Okay, so the second myth.
Yep.
This is one that we've literally heard word for word from people, which is everyone.
And to be fair, this is an easy one to fall into.
Mm-hmm.
It's an easy one to try to. We all do the thing where we try to relate to people and understand what they're going through, and this is an easy one to fall into. So we'll go through it, and then we'll talk about that more.
Yeah, and so it's the everyone is a little autistic myth, and like you said, it probably is coming from a good place of wanting to relate.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's important to understand when, like, you actually don't understand what the person's experience is, to not try to relate to it anyways.
Yeah, I think I've fallen into this one when I say we're talking about neurodivergent person or habits of a neurodivergent person, and say they're talking about routine, and I'm like, oh, I like routine too.
Yeah.
Well, our needs for routine are a lot different.
Right.
For me, it's like to stay organized or to, figure some things out. And for somebody like you, it would be more like you need it to feel safe and regulated.
Right.
So like we have very different needs for those things. Even though I understand what it's like to want routine, we want them for very different reasons.
Right. So yeah, the important thing to understand is there's no such thing as a little autistic.
Yeah.
You're either autistic or you're not. And everyone's autism varies. There's as many different types or whatever you want to call it of autism as there are people. Everyone's going to be different.
Yeah.
And it's not a little autistic and very autistic. It's not low functioning, high functioning. Those aren't helpful labels. Everyone just has different strengths and different weaknesses and different areas that they might need more support in. If you want to like have some way to kind of give a general idea. High support needs versus low support needs is a little less offensive, but still, it's important to focus on the different areas that people struggle in. And like you said, you might have like one similarity to autistic people, but that doesn't make you autistic.
Yeah.
Liking routine doesn't make you autistic.
Well, we've even sat here during the podcast and I've talked about different traits, and I think that as I live with you for longer, I pick up on more of those traits, like the routine and the like certain needing to have these certain things a certain way. But I think that's just like learned and like keeping things cool here. But then I get thinking about like actual autistic diagnosis, and I think about things, and I'm like, no, I'm definitely not. Just yeah.
Another one that is common is for people who are introverts to, I'm a little autistic because I'm introverted. Those are two different things. Yeah, autistic people can be introverted. I'm very introverted, but there's autistic people that are very extroverted too.
The first thing that comes to mind when you say that is, why can't I think of his name?
Tanner?
Yeah, Tanner from Love on the Spectrum. Very, very extroverted, like friendly, wants to talk. And I mean, if you aren't familiar with the show, you can look up Tanner from
He's got a lot of energy. He's got a lot of positivity.
Videos out there, but he just, very, very out there. And there's just differences. Right. It's not,
So you can be an introvert. You can be an introvert that likes routines, but it's not the same thing as like the actual collection of traits and the neuro, because it's a neurodevelopmental thing. It's a completely different way that your brain is wired.
Well, and the need to have those
brings
things
in some of those things that other people might have, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah, the need to have those things even to just regulate to get through life. Like I like routines and function better with routines, but if a routine falls apart, it doesn't ruin my day or send me in a spiral of, toward a burnout or a meltdown.
Right.
Just very different.
Yeah, you're really good at, if something doesn't go to plan, you're good at immediately being able to redirect.
Yeah.
And me, when something doesn't go to plan, I get that immediate drain. It's like, here, we'll take 3 spoons from you because this, and it's like, it's a lot tougher to.
I always feel bad when I can't be there to help redirect to get you back on track. But it's kind of a good balance for us. But it's very different.
Even when you're good at redirecting me, it still costs me some energy.
Sure.
It's still still has that. It's like a physical effect on me. So yeah. What else did I want to say about it? I think we pretty much covered that mostly. Like I said, it's this. Oh, this is the term that I wanted to use. It's like autism is a constellation of traits. It's kind of a good way to think of it. It's not like a linear thing. You've got all these different traits out there, and everyone has different levels of difficulty or strengths with them. And that's what's important to know. So you might, having one trait that is in that constellation doesn't mean that you are autistic. It just means that you may have a trait that is similar.
Yeah. And it took me a while to realize how invalidating saying some of these things can be. What seems like it's quirky or relatable from the outside can actually be a coping mechanism for you. And so, like, my challenge with a lot of these myths is like, if you catch yourself doing it and you realize it, just be like, you know what, I'm sorry, that was insensitive. Yeah. How does that affect you? Or like learn. Take that opportunity to learn, just apologize and move on from it. It's just like, say you dead name somebody or you misgender somebody. Like you realize it in the moment, apologize and move forward. That's kind of what
doesn't need to be a big thing made out of, just letting them know that you realize you had made a mistake.
We're all learning and growing. And I think you realize people make mistakes. And if you show me that even though you make mistakes, that you're trying to do better, that's what I care about. So
for sure.
All right.
The third myth we wanted to talk about is autism is caused by vaccines. This is something that shouldn't have to still be on this list. It shouldn't have to still be talked about in contemporary discussions about autism, except that now we have RFK Jr., a vaccine denier or whatever you want to call it, in charge of the Department of Health.
And to be completely fair, this autism is caused by vaccines came around a lot.
A lot longer. Yeah.
So it may be reinforcing the idea way further down the line than it should be.
Right.
But it's been around a lot longer than that.
It's giving it the appearance of legitimate science is the problem.
Yeah. No, I agree.
When you have people who are in leadership roles of science-based departments and stuff saying things that are unscientific, that gives some legitimacy to things that just aren't scientific. And unfortunately, and I read recently that he got rid of everybody on a vaccine advisory panel that all are actually experts in vaccines. And it, really kind of makes you worry and wonder what's going to happen.
Did we forget about smallpox? Did we forget about polio?
Well, I've seen some headlines about measles is coming back in a lot of places. I think Utah has 5 or 6 cases now because, unfortunately, this anti-vaccine thing, whatever you want to call it, seems to be spreading. And again, it's just there are people who, partially rightfully so, trust these institutions.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's important to have people who actually understand the science and understand how it's supposed to work to be in charge of them.
Yeah.
Because just because the Department of Health and Human Services is saying it, a lot of people will just go, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's easy to, when you haven't had it hit as close to home, to forget what not vaccinating means to certain people, vulnerable populations, people who don't have immune systems. I've personally had my immune system wiped out completely 3 times. So I look at illnesses spreading, even just like the flu and the common cold, a lot different. Family members, my dad went through cancer treatment. My mom's also been immunosuppressed. When you know people like that and they're close to you, my dad went through it during the COVID epidemic, and it's scary. It's so scary. And people that generally are healthy think, oh, I don't need that. But the need for that is to protect that vulnerable population. It's not for them to get it to protect them. It's kind of a community effort.
Well, they call it herd immunity.
Yeah.
And it's not just about each individual person being protected, but it's about the fact that you're going to, you do have
okay.
It's about the fact that you're going to have people in a community that are going to be immunosuppressed or maybe can't get the vaccine or whatever. And that's why it's important for everyone else in the community to be immunized against it so that it won't spread. It's a lot less likely to spread to those people who
And I know that every vaccine is not okay for every person. There's ingredients that they're allergic to, but the idea is that if you can, and obviously do your own research, have your own opinions on that, but
okay, do your own research, I have to say this, does not mean watching YouTube videos.
Yeah.
It does not, please.
It's kind of a slippery slope.
Right.
So,
do your own research means look into people who are experts, look at sources.
Yeah.
Look into the actual science of it.
Medical journals, those kinds of things.
Sorry, did I knock you off track?
No, it's so true, but it's so hard because I try really hard not to influence people's opinions like we've always been with the kids. Do your own research and get your own opinion on things. But this is one of those things where it's if you're doing your research in the right places, this isn't an opinion-based thing.
No,
it's scientific.
It isn't an opinion-based thing. And I always tell the kids, don't take my word for it, meaning look into it.
Do the research for yourself.
Do the research from the experts. There's a reason why we have people who specialize in different things. We can't possibly all know everything we need to know about everything. So we have people who specialize in different areas.
Yeah.
So you should be getting your information from the people who specialized in that area.
Yeah.
And watching a bunch of YouTube videos isn't specializing. Saying things like, oh, this is so obvious. How come the scientists haven't figured it out? Because it's not really as obvious as you think it is. Or sometimes things that seem obvious just aren't true, just because it seems like it might, But when it comes down to the facts of autism and vaccines, there is zero scientific evidence to back that up.
Yeah.
It stemmed from a debunked fraudulent study that was later retracted by the people who put it out there, but it's still going. And that's a good example of how important it is to make sure the right information is getting put out there, because even if you retract it, even if it
just keeps recirculating.
Yep.
I mean, you think about silly memes and stuff that circulate on social media, and people are like, oh, that's not true, this because of this. But then 6 months later, the same thing starts circulating again. It's still out there, and there's still people that haven't heard the side of it that, oh, that's not true, that's been proven wrong.
Yeah.
And so they start to spread it and, like circulate it again.
Yeah.
And that's the danger of it.
If your belief in everything is just, oh, well, it just makes sense, that right there is not enough. As one of my favorite scientists, Neil deGrasse Tyson, says, the universe is under no obligation to make sense to you. And that means there's a lot of things that are true, that we've learned are true, that don't tend to make sense to our just basic understanding.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you're, oh, well, it just makes sense, you need to dig a little deeper.
Yeah. Or, like, where did you get it? Oh, I read it on Facebook.
Yeah.
One of my favorite memes of all time has to be the one that's the picture of Abraham Lincoln. And it's a quote by him. And it says, what is it like?
Don't believe everything you read on the internet.
On the internet. Yeah.
Like that. Yeah,
the internet didn't exist when Abraham Lincoln was alive. So I just think it's funny because it's very...
It's sad because we literally, I've said this, we have like access to massive amounts of information.
But good information and bad information.
Exactly. That's the problem, is people can put it out there, and the struggle is, people being able to
sift through it
and understand what's good and what's not.
Yep.
And that is a skill. Like I took a class, and I'm trying to remember which class it was, but part of it was teaching you how to evaluate sources.
Yeah.
And, understanding, the person who wrote this paper, who are they? What are they? Who do they work for? What do they do? Might they have an agenda? Like you need to really look into a lot of it.
Kind of bias.
Yeah. Are they going to have some biases?
Who's financially backing their institution?
Exactly.
And is there a reason for them to say things one way or the other when it's not true?
Just because it's in a scientific paper doesn't automatically make it true either. That's why there's the peer review process.
Yeah.
And that's a really important part of the scientific process. And I've seen videos where people like attack the peer review process as though there's like it's a bad thing. It's like, no, that's how we get there. Like there's not this massive conspiracy among scientists. If anything, it's a rivalry. It's a competition.
Oh yeah, they want to be the one to prove something.
Right. If someone puts out a paper and someone else can debunk it, they're going to.
Yeah.
And so that's just really important for a lot of things, but especially when it comes back down to this vaccines cause autism. It's just there's no basis for it, and it causes problems with people not getting their children vaccinated, which causes disease to spread, and it also causes unnecessary guilt by parents who have autistic kids who now think it's their fault because they vaccinated them.
Yeah.
And that's just not necessary, not true. Yeah. So we've beaten that dead horse, but it keeps getting back up anyways. So, we'll probably mention it again in the future.
I'm sure.
We talked about it in our very first episode, so it'll probably keep coming up, at least for the next 4 years. Okay, so the next myth is, you might hear some people say that, oh, they can't be autistic because they're too verbal, they're too smart, they're too friendly, they're too outgoing, they care about their family. It's kind of a broader myth of all these different things that people don't think autistic people can do.
Yeah.
And
I think it's so interesting to me because that's a very outside perspective. And from the outside, if that's what you see, that one honestly isn't super hurtful to say if you just don't understand what's behind it.
Right.
But something that I thought about as I was reading this is like, you can be like witty and friendly and outgoing in certain situations where people don't know you, and you like socially you can mesh. You've learned that. But what people don't see is when we come home, how exhausted you are afterwards, how that affects you afterwards. And it's not that you don't want to do it or that you don't see the benefit in that in certain situations, but it's legitimately hard for you.
Right.
And so to say that, oh, well, he's witty and he's funny and he's friendly and interacts with us at face value, oh, he can't be autistic.
Right.
that's kind of the gut punch right there. Oh, he
Right.
can't be autistic because of that, when we see firsthand what it costs.
And it comes in a lot of different forms. Like, the coworker of mine who saw that I was reading a book about autism and, oh, who's autistic? Oh, I am. Oh, it must be a very minor case. It's like, I mean, first of all, like, we're just coworkers. You can't possibly know me very well anyways.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, that just means I'm really good at masking. And I learned to mask without realizing I was masking. So yeah, you get pretty good at it.
Well, and to be fair, maybe your needs are a lot different than somebody else in his
Right.
life that he knows that's autistic.
Well, and that's the important part about this, is that
Yeah.
autism looks different with
For everybody.
everybody.
Yeah.
We have a nephew who is definitely higher support needs. He's got different strengths and different difficulties. He loves talking about vehicles. He can sit there and tell you all kinds of,
What was
details
the
about
first
some of the
question he asked
vehicles.
you yesterday when he saw you? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
He asked you if you had a Ryobi push
Oh yeah,
lawnmower.
yeah.
He
yeah.
is obsessed with Ryobi
He
push
loves
lawnmowers.
Ryobi push
And
lawnmowers.
you know what? You were able to say, actually, I do. And
Yeah,
it was so
he showed
funny.
a picture.
He was so
like,
excited.
does it look like this? And it was a picture of our electric lawnmower. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he knows a lot about the stuff that he's interested in.
But I have to say, this kiddo, his mom was told that he wouldn't like speak and things like that when he was little. And speaking of high support needs, they have gone like way out of their way to give him the support he needs. And
yeah, he's smart. He
get a little emotional talking about it. But yeah, he's like so fun. I sat and played Mario Kart not Mario Kart, but Mario 3D World yesterday with him, and he's so fun. And it just, I don't know, it warms my heart.
Yeah, another thing, like, they say you don't have a sense of humor or something. Like, later last night when we were spending time with them, there's this TikTok that's like the poop word of the day, and it's a talking toilet paper roll that's, giving that, and he just wanted to show us every single one, and he'd be laughing hysterically. And it's funny. Like, it was the videos are funny, but it's just funny to watch him just crack up
enjoy
at this.
It. Yeah.
So yeah, it's like that. It's important to understand that we're all going to have different strengths, different weaknesses, different likes, different dislikes.
Yep.
There's probably autistic people in just about every field out there. There's this idea that you can't have a job, you can't pay taxes, kind of going back to our first episode again. It's just wrong. Like, I'm willing to bet that there's autistic people in just about every field out there, because if it's along the lines of their special interest, then they're going to be great at it. They're going to be the ideal person to be working in that field.
Yeah.
So, and again, like, there's even some things like if they're nonverbal, there's this idea that nonverbal means not intelligent. That's literally just nonverbal. Like, they could be nonverbal and super, right.
Some of the, like getting subtitles for what's happening in some of those brilliant autistic brains that just can't speak it. Like, I just think that's there's some amazing things that happen.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Mm-hmm. Being able to, like, perform in front of crowds is another thing that some people might not think. But, again, back to Low on the Spectrum, look at Abby. She's made some videos. She's written some songs.
Yeah.
She, wrote a song for season 3 of Love on the Spectrum.
I don't know.
Has even been nominated for Emmys.
Yeah.
And she'll get up there and perform on stage for huge crowds.
I don't know who's
I couldn't even do
producing these, and I don't know if it's like an actual Sesame Street thing, but her and David have started doing these shorts with Cookie Monster, Count Dracula, like cute little.
He's just the Count. He's not Dracula.
Oh, you're right, the Count. My bad. But yeah, like performing and like sharing their abilities and their special interests with people. Like, I just very definitely extroverted and social.
And again, tied into this is the functioning labels again, the high functioning versus low. Oh, well, it must be very high functioning. Again, it's not helpful. That calling someone high functioning dismisses the struggles that we have and makes them less likely to get the supports that they do need. Because, they're high functioning, they're fine. They can just keep doing what they've been doing, and like, you don't realize that that's costing them a lot. That takes a lot of effort, a lot of energy. it makes it difficult for them to do the other things that everyone should be able to just take for granted.
Yeah.
By the same token, calling someone low functioning is dismissing their strengths and dismissing their abilities and kind of just writing them off.
Yeah.
And that's, it's kind of like what my sister was told when her son, was little and first diagnosed. Oh, he's not going to learn to speak. He's not going to be able to do this. He's not going to be able to do that. And, he's showing them all wrong.
Yeah.
And just dismissing that, so easily, it doesn't help anyone. And it definitely is hurtful and misleading. And
well, and even for like the nonverbal autistic people who can't overcome that challenge, I've seen so many of my mom friends that will say things like, it's like the lessons that this child teaches them in life, like how to advocate, how to navigate certain things, how to love, like unconditionally. Like they may not be able to say the words, but
Yeah.
So.
Yep. For sure. Let me make sure we covered everything I wanted to talk about. Yeah, we pretty much covered most of it. Again, a lot of it comes down to some people are masking, so that's why you might, they don't seem autistic.
Yeah.
That's just because they're masking.
Yep.
Okay. How many was that?
That was 4.
That was 4? Okay. So the last one, this one can get me really frustrated sometimes. And that is the myth that, they just need better discipline. And usually this is something that comes up when we're talking about meltdowns or burnouts.
Yeah.
You need to teach your child that that's not acceptable. Or you just, I would never let my child do that. Like, it's the kind of thing that whether you realize you're talking about an autistic child or not, it's none of your business. You see a parent struggling with their child in public, or you see a child struggling with being in public, it's not your place to give commentary about it whatsoever. If you're not willing to try to be helpful, if that's even possible at all, then just keep it to yourself. You are not being helpful by telling a parent that they're doing something wrong. Yeah. And it's the audacity of people who, I see this parent and this child and I have no idea who they are. I've not seen any part of their life. I'm just seeing this child struggling right now. And I think I know how to make it better. Like the audacity is amazing to me sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't possibly know enough about anyone that you're seeing out in public for the first time to give them any kind of advice whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, and it's quite often comes from people who have no experience. And I don't know, it's not an excuse, but it also kind of explains why they react the way they do. They have no idea what they're dealing with, which is why we're kind of why we're here. Yeah. Like, let's teach people about this and encourage people to learn and be more open to it. But yeah,
it makes me want to respond snarky sometimes and be like, well, obviously your parents didn't teach you to mind your damn business.
Right. Yeah. Your parents did. I don't know. I hate to say things like that because you never know where somebody came from. But like, okay, maybe your parents didn't do such a great job either. Why are you judging me? Right. And yeah, a different perspective on this, because we talk about kids having meltdowns in grocery stores and people having all kinds of opinions about that, is what about the adult autistic meltdown? Right. And I think that it's interesting because, like, in the moment, you don't always have the words and you can't always express it. And I used to think that you were like being defiant or ignoring me or like having an attitude or whatever the case may be, like when you'd have those moments before we understood what was going on. But when you recognize that for what it is, you can give the space that's needed. But so many times and so often I see in autistic spouse support groups that I'm in that other people that obviously don't understand. And it's so sad to me. And yet I understand it firsthand, being in a relationship that you don't understand on such a high level. But, people will be like, oh, well, if your spouse won't do this, then
they don't care.
Basically, the response is to treat them like a child, take this away from them, or punish them in this way, or, like that's like their advice. And I'm, it's a partnership. It's not a parent-child relationship. So I think that that's important to keep in perspective, but
Right.
it's not a matter of discipline. I think it's very much understanding.
Sometimes some of the things that you'll show me from those groups, and it's not a lot, but sometimes it comes off to me as, well, I'm fine with them being autistic at home, but when we're in public, I expect them to, whatever. And it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, we don't control it. If I could control it in public,
it's not just a
I'd
switch you turn
control
on
it
and
at
off.
home as well. It's like,
right.
I think unfortunately it's not necessarily a good thing, but like I'm at a point where I can at least try to get myself out of the public situation that I'm in. And unfortunately that comes from understanding that it's just not going to be accepted. It's not going to be seen for what it is. It's going to be seen, oh, that person's crazy. I mean, like, how many times do we see, unfortunately, people, especially in the day of everyone taking videos and putting it on social media, you see someone who is clearly having a mental distressing episode, whether they're melting down, whether they're having a legitimate mental emergency, and everyone wants to video it and put it online and talk about, oh, this crazy person, or oh, they're terrible, or oh, they need to be locked up. And it's like, it's especially troubling for me when I watch that, because like sometimes I can watch it and I can be like, they're melting down. I can tell they're melting down.
Yeah.
Or clearly this person is having a very serious mental issue. They may actually be seeing hallucinations. They may actually be hearing voices, and it's not helpful to video it, put it on the internet, and everyone called them crazy.
Yeah.
Like, this is someone who's having a legitimate issue, a legitimate distressing event. And that's one of the things that makes me say I don't like the world we live in, is that becomes entertainment for so many people.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important that we also address, like in the situation, since I brought it like from discipline of a child, people saying that, oh, the child just needs discipline during a meltdown, and that carries into relationships. Also, understanding that there is a line, like, you're not there to discipline or punish your spouse. It's a partnership, but you're also not required to sit and take abuse. And if they're using that as a manipulation tactic or a way to attack you or anything like that, we're not asking anybody to stay in that situation.
Right. Absolutely. No, there's like, autism is not an excuse to be a jerk.
No.
Absolutely. And there have been some situations that you've shown me and you've been like, what's your take on that? And I'm like, that guy's just an a-hole, like, I'm like, that doesn't come off as an autistic thing. And we're not advocating that you should just sit there and take abuse from somebody because they're calling it autism. But it's important to understand what their meltdown looks like and what it,
Yeah, because you said the videos, and I know that there have been circumstances where those videos have been a spouse recording their spouse having a very real meltdown, and it's pretty obvious from my perspective. They're not attacking anybody. They're just like trying to find an escape method for the situation they're in to at least stop making it worse.
Yeah.
And it's exploited. And honestly, to me, taking a video in that circumstance and posting it to a public forum, I mean, they're private groups, but still, I feel like that's a public forum. I feel like that's abusive.
Yeah.
So it goes
betrayal,
both ways.
Really. It's a betrayal of trust.
Yeah, you can't expect that person to trust you if you're doing things like that.
And I remember the one that you like showed me and played for me, and this kind of goes back to the first myth where it caused talking about hyper empathy for us. Listening to how he was responding was causing me to feel what I believed he was feeling, because I've been in similar situations. I've had my autism weaponized against me, not knowing it was autism that was being weaponized, but I've had my neurology weaponized against me and used as evidence that I'm crazy, or evidence that I'm abusive, or evidence of whatever, and that's not what it was. And so listening to that, knowing that it's a recording that a spouse made to like almost shame their autistic spouse and everything, that really caused me to feel what that was like when I went through that again. And that's really what empathy is understanding what someone's feeling and going through, and feeling that a little bit. And definitely, like, I remember listening to that and just, I started getting that same tightness in my chest, just like,
yeah.
oh man, that's like,
I remember that too. I'm a little more careful about, uh, as a side note, it doesn't have anything to do with our episode this week, but when I bring things to you from that group, it's always this is between me and you. And I always do it as an exercise in learning. Like,
Yeah.
I want your perspective on the situation
Right.
so that maybe I can see it from a different lens
Mhm.
or understand it better, or what goes on in your mind when this happens, because we're not in the heat of the situation. So maybe you can explain that to me better so I understand it. So my intention with that is always just to learn more, but I never share it elsewhere.
Right. And even when you share it with me, it's usually just like the post. You're not sharing names. You're not like, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've been really big about, like, I'm not trying to invade that space.
Yeah.
Because that, spouses of autistic people deserve a space where they can provide support to each other.
Right.
But yeah, like, I'm willing to give my perspective on things. Or like when you did show that, it's like, it was like you probably knew what my perspective was going to be, but you just wanted to, confirm it. And yeah, that to me, that's a huge betrayal.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and that was my first thought when I watched it too. I'm like, like, there's times when I wish that you could hear yourself. I genuinely do. And it's crossed my mind, like, how in this situation can I get him to hear what he sounds like? Because you even know that sometimes when you get heated, you just say things, and it's not like you'd say anything you don't mean, but the tone and stuff, you don't hear that. And I've thought about, like, recording it, and it's a hard line for me. I won't do it because I don't want you to feel that mistrust in those situations.
I'm obviously not hearing it the way you hear it, and even if you were to record it, I may not be hearing it the same way. But like I've said, like, when I'm really melting down, like, I'm not having a good time either, and I'm not okay with my tone. It's like, if I could tone it down, I would.
Yeah.
And it's like, kind of in a way, I'm almost listening to myself, saying things that I don't want to be saying.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's already a little bit of that. And I think that's kind of the difference between I'm melting down versus someone who's just narcissistic and just being a jerk and being abusive.
Yeah. Well, and my perspective on it always is to help you with other relationships that you have, like with the kids and stuff like that. So if this is what I'm hearing, this is how we're hearing it, I want you to know that so that you can understand why it may have been hurtful, or it may have been hard for somebody to hear that, because I draw my line at personal attacks. You don't go into personal attacks, but still some of the things you say can be like, oh, that stung.
I understand how the tone can sometimes come off as personal, but
it's not.
But it's not
meant that way. Yeah. I don't remember where I was going with that, but yeah, I think it's.
Yeah. I think where we were going is to, talking about the whole recording thing. And yeah, I don't know that even with the best intentions, I'm not sure that it would have the effect that you would want it to have, because communication isn't just what's being said. It's not just how it's being said. It's how you're hearing it and how you're taking it. So you can record someone and play it back and be like, do you hear yourself? And they might be like, yeah, I'm hearing exactly what I heard when I was talking to you.
Yeah.
Because they're still hearing it from their perspective and their experiences and their biases.
Yeah.
So even under the, best intentions, I don't see that as something that's productive, and you risk making them feel betrayed.
Right. And that was where I was going with it, is I was just going to circle back to my intention with that would be to help you with your relationships with other people. It would never be to correct you or tell you how to feel about something, because I'm not there to parent you. Like, that's not my job.
Yeah.
So I just try to find different ways to help, and I try to process them and think them through before I do it, because they can also have negative effects.
Yeah.
So
kind of what I want to, like, really make sure people understand when it comes to this, they just need discipline. Autistic traits is not something that you can program out of someone. It's not something that you can punish out of them. It reminds me kind of, many, many years ago when they tried to, people who were left-handed, when they tried to force them to write with their right hand, and they would try to condition them using negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of the idea behind punishment. And you're not making that person right-handed. You're forcing them to suppress their left-handedness and learn to write with their right hand. They're still a left-handed person because it's the wiring in their brain. It's stuff that you can't change, you can't train out. It's literally how their brain is wired. And it's the same thing with autism. Like, if I could figure out a way to not get pushed to meltdown, to not, lose that control,
Sign me up.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just not possible. Yeah. And it certainly is not possible through punishment or discipline.
That just adds trauma to the mix and makes it messier. So there's definitely better ways to navigate it.
It's bad enough to try to get someone to no longer be who they are. It's worse to do it through negative reinforcement.
Yeah. Well, and I think if we're dealing with kids, it's okay to be open with them and be like, okay, this is a challenge that you have in a public situation, or in this situation, this is how we handle that scenario. But in our life every day, you might not have to do that. Like, this is in our house, this is our safe space, you can handle it this way.
It's important for them to understand why they might get the reactions they're going to get in a public setting, or why some people might consider that unacceptable. But it's also important that they understand that you understand that it's not something that they can control. So it's not them being bad despite what other people might try to say.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, in a way, teaching them to use masking as a power for them. Yeah. Like, decide what situations they want to be able to use masking in and use that to their benefit. But you don't have to mask all the time. I don't know. I don't know. There's not really a good way to describe that.
Not. And that's a really tough topic, talking about, teaching someone when to mask. Because in an ideal world, you shouldn't have to mask at all.
Yeah.
We live in a world where people will take videos of you in your worst moment and then post it on social media to discuss it. So that's just...
So how do you protect your kid?
How do you protect them? How do you protect yourself? From those situations? And it's kind of controversial because, I don't want to advocate teaching anyone to mask.
No.
But I understand in my life, there are still situations where I have to mask. And if I didn't mask, I wouldn't be where I am.
Right.
And I remember even when I had gotten the job that we moved out here for, and I was seeing my counselor in Ohio, and I was talking about, he was talking about, oh, well, how are you going to handle that? And I was like, I'm going to do the same thing I do anytime I start a new job. I'm going to be quiet and observe and, kind of see how things are and not just put myself out there. And he's like, oh, well, don't you think you should be able to go in there and not mask? I'm like, yeah, I should be able to, but I'm also on probation for a year, so I'm not going to.
And 40 years of life experience has told me that doesn't work out well. Yeah. Like, I know better. Yeah.
And the job I came from, I was known for saying exactly how what I thought, how I feel about things, whether it offends people or not. It kind of became my, part of my charm. I used to joke around with people. But even that came, that I'd been there for almost 4 years. Yeah. And I didn't start out that way.
Yeah, I didn't start that way.
It's like you kind of sit back quietly and observe and get an idea of.
But it also came
acceptable.
With like a mutual respect.
Right.
Like they knew that you were just saying it because it was legitimately how you felt.
Right.
And they also knew that you were doing your job and you were good at it.
Right.
So like they would also say things like, well, if Keith tells you it can't be done, then it can't be done.
Yeah.
And so like they had that respect for you, but at the same time they would chuckle when you'd say how you really felt about something.
And I would even sometimes I'd say something and then, like realize if there's like a new person there, I'd say something and realize that that's something that someone might take offensively. And I'd be like, oh, don't worry, I'm an asshole. That's just part of my charm,
Yeah.
And, but yeah, like now I'm kind of at a point where like, I just want to keep to myself and do my job. And, it's not even that I feel pressured to mask. It's actually less masking, just sitting there keeping to myself.
Yeah.
Cause I'm not trying to put on this sociable mask. I'm not trying to, and people have started to learn that, if they start talking to me, I'll talk to them. I'm not going to like be a jerk and ignore people.
You just don't seek out the conversations.
Right.
If they come to you, you'll participate.
I could sit at my desk and just do my own thing for 8 hours. But if people start talking to me about stuff, I'll talk to them too.
Yeah.
It's just,
And they probably learn that you're quite interesting to talk to, but they have to start it for you to participate. So yeah.
And it's got to be deeper than just, the weather, even though we talk about that for our job a lot, but,
Right. I mean, if it was legitimately for work, you would be like all over it. But if you're asking me if it's going to be sunny this weekend while you're off work, I don't care.
It's funny because now that I say that, I'm like, actually, there's a lot of times where I'll actually start a conversation with someone based on the weather. And it's usually like, oh, did you see what, it's usually a situation where we're like, the forecast is this, but we're like, no, we've had too much experience. That's not what's really going to happen.
Look what's over Chicago. We all know what that means.
And then it turns out going the way we planned. And
Yeah.
So that's actually kind of funny now that I think about it. I actually start conversations based on the weather at work, but
but that's one of your pet peeves in everyday life.
In everyday life,
really funny. But anyways, there are so many myths, many, and we could go on for days about them. Those are the 5 we picked. We
may even do another episode later about more myths because, like you said, there's a lot.
Yeah, if you guys have specific myths that maybe we haven't encountered and you want us to touch on them, we're happy to do that too. Yeah.
Whether you're an autistic person who, I hear this all the time and I wish people understood it better, or if you're a neurotypical who's like, I hear this and is it true? Is it a myth? Is it whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's learn from both.
Let us
angles.
know. Send us some messages or, you can comment or whatever. And we'll probably revisit this and talk about even more myths.
Yeah.
For sure. But that pretty much wraps up.
Yeah.
Our episode for this week.
Yep. Well, we appreciate you all. We are glad you joined us this week to talk about debunking some autistic myths. If you have more to contribute, feel free to add it in the comments or email us. Make sure you like and share.
I'll tell you that the biggest thing that if you can do anything for us other than just hitting the subscribe button, which is really easy, is leaving a review. And wherever you can, if you could leave us a review, and it can be 100% honest. Like we recently bought cars and they're like, oh, please give me a review and anything less than 5 stars is failing. Like, I'm not going to give any pressure like that. Like, tell us legitimately,
we're here to grow.
How we're doing, where you think we can do better.
This.
Yeah. We just said, hey, let's start a podcast. And so we started one. So we can definitely, like, if you have some constructive criticism or even deconstructive criticism, we're willing to listen to any of it. And leaving reviews is the best way to help others get an idea. Someone might see, the Apparently Autistic podcast, what's that about? And if they see reviews about it and go, okay, yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
That might make them more likely to listen as well.
Yeah. So anyways, thanks for joining us. We hope you all have a great week and we'll be back again next week.
Yep. We'll see you. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Please consult a qualified healthcare provider for diagnosis or treatment of autism or related condition.